We're seeing it today in this deal with Vietnam, and that second tariff rate of 40% on transshipping, which really is all about Chinese products or components that are passing through Vietnam on their way to the United States. One of the things we saw following the first trade wars, the first Trump trade wars, during its first term, was that a lot of production moved from places like China to Vietnam. Vietnam really got a boom out of it, and it saw a lot of imports increase from China, and it also at the same time was exporting a lot to the United States. People at the White House and others here in Washington have long suspected that a lot of the stuff that was coming from Vietnam to the U.S. was in fact kind of Chinese goods just taking an extra stop to do a bit of tariff washing along the way. So what China is worried about is exactly a deal like this, something that isolates them, that isolates Chinese companies, that applies a higher tariff rate to them. We still don't know the details here, but will this apply to Chinese companies that have factories in Vietnam, or will it just apply to products that are made in China and are coming through Vietnam and so on? But if you look at this deal today with Vietnam and you add it up to maybe we see deals with countries like Thailand and Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, all of which kind of contain similar provisions that are targeted at China, and that's going to start isolating the Chinese economy, and it's going to hurt them, and that's what they don't want, and so they're going to push back against that, both against the U.S. and these countries that are signing deals with the U.S.
Doesn't China, Shawn, have the muscle to deal with this? I mean, they're so much closer to Vietnam than we are. If I look at ECTR Go, which is an amazing function on the Bloomberg, I see that the Chinese do $240 billion of trade with Vietnam, and we only do $150 billion in trade with Vietnam. Can't the Chinese, pull their own Trump here? And also, can't they just pull workers out of factories like they are doing in India, for example?
Absolutely, and that's where things go next, right? I mean, we're going to wait and see what the Chinese reaction is, how they apply their own economic muscle on these countries, and where things go and how ugly things get from there. Now, again, this is all going to depend on the details. Apple has shifted a lot of production, or its suppliers have shifted a lot of production from China to Vietnam. By some accounts, the Apple suppliers employ something like 250,000 people in Vietnam. But a lot of those suppliers are also Chinese companies. They also depend on Chinese components. They need access to the supply chains out of China as well in order to produce those goods that are headed for the United States. So, in trade deals, you have something called rules of origin. They are fiendishly complicated, but they set kind of thresholds. So is that threshold for Chinese content or Vietnamese content going to be at 60%, which is what we're hearing the Indians are pushing for, or the U.S. is pushing for in terms of India, or is it going to be lower than that? I mean, again, this is where the details matter, and that the details are really going to end up determining the Chinese reaction.
I mean, doesn't the world still need China, at least at this, on this Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025, Shawn? I mean, you can't just back away completely.
Absolutely, and we got a real reminder of that just in recent weeks with what happened with rare earth magnets, right? And where China's blocked the exports of rare earth magnets in response to the pressure from the Trump administration. And what we very quickly discovered was that Ford and other auto factories were slowing down production, in some cases shutting down production temporarily, because they need those magnets to go into all sorts of products. So China is there in almost everyone's supply chain, and they have a lot of power as a result. I
mean, the EU is, as you write, and the team writes in this story, the EU is China's largest export destination for EVs, and investment from Chinese firms into the bloc plus the UK hit 10 billion euros, or about 12 billion US last year, according to recent research from Rhodium Group. I mean, how delicate is it for really the world? And just got about 25 seconds here in terms of backing off of China. It's tricky.
Look, yeah, absolutely. Look, the U.S. is not the only investor out there. China's been investing a lot in factories overseas, not just in the EU, by the way, in places like Mexico, in Southeast Asia as well. And, you know, those countries want that investment. They're not going to want to see that go away.